The FedProfits Association presents Thrive in the Recession through the power of no-bid contracts. And now, here's your host, Mr. Supercharged Profits himself, Ron Imbach.
Hello again, and welcome to another episode of Thrive in a Recession through the power of no-bid contracts. I'm your host, Ron Imbach, Mr. Supercharged Profits, and I am really excited to be back with you and have another exciting show with yet again another guest that's going to give you great information on federal contracting, how to get involved, and I'm going to go ahead and give you a little sneak preview. We're going to talk about an incredible concept. This might be the best concept you're going to hear about in federal contracting. It's called teaming. Some of you may be familiar with it. Many of you will not be, but we're going to talk to someone who's a real expert in this. And he'll talk to you about how he structured his new business to work with federal agencies in that way and teaming. But it's so exciting because you can just, instead of working on one contract, you might be able to work on 3, 4, 5, 10 contracts or more at the same time. It's really exciting. So without any further ado, I would like to introduce you to Shawn Owens. Shawn, how are you, bud?
Good, Ron. How you doing?
I'm doing great. So, Shawn, I have to admit, I had to write this down because with federal lingo and vernacular, I knew that I would mess it up if I didn't write it down. But Shawn spent 10 years with the Air Force, and 7 of those years were in tactical operations. There's a few other names for it, but I shortened it to that, Shawn, so I wouldn't make a mistake with it, all right? And then he spent another 3 years, which is kind of what we're going to focus on, as the lead program acquisition manager for the Air Force, buying all kinds of parts and doing things with some of the most sophisticated fighter jets and planes in the United States Air Force. So really excited. Whenever I talk to this guy, he's just really interesting to talk to. But Shawn, if you could tell us just a little bit about your background. I usually like to start everyone off with that, and then we'll go right into talking about, how the position you had, the lead acquisition manager position, led into what you're doing now and how teaming is such an exciting way to get into federal contracting.
Sure, yeah, no problem, Ron. And I'll kind of clear up some stuff just because of the way I look and the way I present myself. So when people hear tactical and operations, no, I wasn't like ground running around tactical that way. But as far as like actively working with enlisted on the physical aircraft and the air components, air vehicle themselves, yes. So I spent 7 years as a non-destructive tester and inspector. So for those that care on the engineering and STEM side, that's mag particle, dye penetrant, industrial radiography, ultrasonic testing, laser chirography, thermography, eddy current testing, all that stuff. So I did that for 7 years on the tactical operation side, and then transitioned to strategic and planning, where I was the maintenance activation planning team chief for the 5th generation fighters. So that's the F-35 and the F-22. And I stumbled basically upon that role in the business office because of my subject matter expertise, helping out the 570th Squadron for the F-35s. That's a depot repair maintenance squadron for the F-35s. That, due to interfacing with Lockheed Martin, who is the prime, and we'll get to that in a sec too, interfacing with Lockheed Martin, interfacing with the program office, who's the big buyer, that led to the position that I had in the business office. So 10 years overall in the civilian side, working for the government, and all of that led to what started my business on this side, which is what brings us to teaming and kind of what we're going to talk about today. And that's federal teaming, and the opportunities that are there for businesses are fantastic. And excited to kind of talk about it.
Well, great. I mean, you mentioned a couple of things there, just so everyone can know the difference. And I know we've probably discussed this before, but I think it's especially since we're focusing on teaming. Could you just distinguish a little bit between working with someone as a subcontractor and the difference between that and teaming, and whether you're a prime, whether you're a sub, that kind of thing in the relationship?
Yeah, sure. So teaming overall basically refers to the whole relationship. It's joint venturing or prime subcontractor teaming. So those are really the two things you're talking about. If you're joint venturing, so basically horizontal teaming to where you're sharing responsibilities across the board almost on the same level. So you're utilizing certain aspects of each other's business to be able to act together as a single joint venture. So that way you both are now the prime working together on something. The other side of it, which is the side that I'm very familiar with in the way that I basically run things, is prime subcontractor teaming. So take, for example, if we're building a large, I don't know, let's just say a house, for example, you would think of a general contractor who runs the project to build the house. They have framers, they have people who do concrete, they have someone that builds a deck, they have an electrician that they go to, they have a plumber. Very, very similar, but now think bigger projects and think projects within, a federal installation. We need to build a perimeter fence while having what's called intrusion detection systems, IDS systems, put up at the same time. So you have people that need to do utilities. You need people that need to physically put up the barriers. So you need someone to manage those. And that's typically prime to subcontractor. So you sub part of me as the prime, subbing to someone who's going to bring materials, sub to someone that's going to be building and erecting the actual physical barriers, sub to someone that's going to be doing the utilities, to do the electrical for the IDS, the intrusion detection system, wherever it may be. So those are pretty much, when we think of teaming, it's joint venture together, acting as one for the sake of this contract, or prime contractor to subcontractors, however many there may be, to complete a job or complete a project. So that's how that works.
Okay. Now, let me ask you, you mentioned something a little bit earlier in the role that you had in the business office for 3 years, and you mentioned that. You mentioned what your activities typically were, because I think it prepared you so well for what you're doing and working for businesses now in this teaming framework. So could you talk just a little bit more about your experience in the business office? And, you told me I had to reach out to these folks and this group and these to get whatever you needed to have done to get it done.
On the micro level, I would travel around the country with the big government buyer. I would travel around with the prime contractor to a subcontractor's facility, me acting as the representative from the Air Force base that's going to be receiving the product or receiving the repair capability or receiving the modifying capability. That's why I was there, to make sure that our facilities could do what they were doing. We were there to the subcontractor because they were the OEM. They were the ones actually manufacturing and making the tech data and everything else. But Lockheed Martin was the prime who was working with the subcontractor. And then I was also there with the big, the actual money where it was coming from, to make sure that their contract was working the way that it should. So I was seeing the person who was the prime, I was seeing the subcontracting team, and I was seeing how it was going to benefit at the time, the Air Force base that I was working for. So seeing all of that laid the groundwork perfectly, because that's all I'd seen, is nothing but teaming, prime contractors, subcontractors. Lockheed Martin being the prime, subbing to Collins Aerospace, subbing to General Dynamics, subbing to all these other components, all these other manufacturers who created components to help us gain the repair capability on their weapon system as it needed it, as it was identified. So seeing all of that on such a big scale, on a grand scale, absolutely. I knew that it could be done because I helped get contracts off the ground.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah.
Well, and you know what? The one thing is, you're describing that to me, Shawn, that I just know that's why, your new venture with your new company, your consulting company, why it's a perfect fit, because the way you describe that, especially for folks in our audience and listening to the show today, you're going, well, I know there's a lot of business out there, a lot of federal business, but it seems so confusing. How would I navigate all that between? And you just kind of described the navigation process. Okay.
Sure.
And why teaming with someone like you for a company that's a construction company or a supply company or a tech company or whatever the case may be works out perfectly, because you know how to get things done. That's kind of been our theme, right, so far?
Yep.
You know how to get things done. And if you can bring in the right people, the right small businesses to get things done, Wow. It seems like a perfect marriage. So,
For sure. And I've been told too, I mean, sometimes it's preferred, and I'll tell you why. So you think of something like a janitorial contract or something like that, or a grounds maintenance. If I contract with a grounds maintenance crew, just a straight grounds maintenance crew, and I'm unsatisfied with their performance, me acting as the government, unsatisfied with someone's performance, I'm going to have to halt services, end everything, and then resolicit and get a new contractor. If you're working with a team or a prime to a sub, and you ding my contract, so me operating as the prime, and I find out that my subcontractors aren't performing to the standard that's required, I have the ability to pivot. So the contract doesn't have to cease activity. I'll just have to pivot and then make it known. And then obviously, if we need to work out a contractual amendment or whatever, if the subcontractor was a part of it and it's been a known, which that gets into a whole other thing, but the service doesn't have to stop. So utilizing someone as a prime, you act as a way to help filter and make sure that appropriate local competition is still there that can service a location. But yeah, that's having the ability to speak their language. So for project managers who deal with Gantt charts, converting that into what's called an IMS, or an integrated master schedule, being able to speak to them and being cognizant of what period of performance means to them, understanding where their pain points are from the government. Knowing that looking at sam.gov, when you scroll to the bottom, you'll see a name on the left, you'll see a name on the right. Usually the name on the left is your contracting specialist, so the one that's going to be working directly with you. Typically, the person to the right is your contracting officer, someone that has a position of responsibility over that office. Knowing that those people have somebody that gave them that contract, and then me helping decipher a statement of work. So then that way the subcontractor is protected, as well as making sure that the actual contract they're giving us, it's actually going to be a contract that they want. Because I've seen that happen before too. So being able to are you sure this is what you want? When I've seen something that it just doesn't look right. So then I'm like, okay, while we're in this period of conversation, can you please go ask the POC, or please go ask whoever the end user is, X, Y, and Z. And they'll come back, oh, we need to make a change. We need to make an amendment. We're going to kick out the due date even further. So it's really just because of what I've seen and because of the things that I've done, gives me a really broad perspective and a really acute pain point to be able to fix when I'm dealing with government contractors, or excuse me, when I'm dealing with contracting officers on the government side, just because I've seen it. So
right.
It makes it an easier transition. If you've never done business with the government, it doesn't have to be scary. That's something where I can help you out with, as someone who sat on the other side of the computer, sat on the other side of the aisle, used to get all dressed up and would shake people's hands and would brief to people that had stars on their shoulder. So I can help you get into the door. So that's basically what I strive to do, especially with small businesses who are looking to get into this space, is to just shorten that learning curve and get you doing what you do best, which is the actual job that you want to do for the government.
Again, as I hear all that, the value that you bring to the table, as and you're going to be a prime in most of those teaming situations, right?
Yep, for sure.
But the value that you bring with the experience you had, 3 years, but how much would you say? I mean, you and I were talking once about how much you actually purchased in with Air Force jets. We know how much those things cost and how much how much would you say you bought in products from in procurement?
I had the number because that was one of the things. So if anyone that hears this is working for the government, then they know things like DAU, Defense Acquisition University, and getting certain LPCP certifications, just all that stuff. So I had to fluff my resume. So if I had my resume in front of me, I'd be able to tell you, because we pulled the numbers that it's in the hundreds of millions, because in my time there, we expanded the footprint for the F-35 itself. So it went from having 5 jet space to 20 jet space, converted a building to a ABDR facility, aircraft battle damage repair facility. We were in the process of doing a military construction, MilCon for government smart people, doing MilCon, a brand new campus for a few things. As far as actual dollars spent, used, right before I left, I think I ended up spending somewhere in the range of $3 million was my last thing that we did right before I left.
You know what's cool about that? Because when I think about that, and again, I knew you before this. That's why I invited you on the call, and we talked about what you did. But most of your contracts, I would assume the vast majority of them were 6 and 7 figure contracts. Would that'd be accurate, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay. And I mean those are the kinds of contracts that, for a typical person coming in, a small business person who doesn't have experience, I mean, their initial bid on a contract like that could be, 100, 200 or more pages long.
Yeah.
Okay, just getting through the bid process is complicated. Then once you get the contract itself and you got to review that, I mean, so having someone with your experience, you've done the complicated contracts, is an invaluable service to people that you work with. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's why, quite frankly, we are very, very happy at FedProfits, and we'll be putting up a QR code here before long to basically give you some information, to contact us, check out our website, learn a little bit more about us, because we're very lucky we are working and our members are working with Mr. Owens. Shawn is working with them on deals like this every day. And we're so excited and glad to have him. It was very coincidental how we met each other. I think you came on to one of our CEO roundtables. Is that right?
Yeah. So, because I wanted to see your guys' network. Was really my thing. Was like I wanted to see all of the different companies, and if they were struggling, I was like, well, getting in front of a government buyer is not an issue for me. Talking, speaking. I mean, obviously, we're very flippant right now, very loose. But if we needed to tighten it up, dress it up, and speak to them, depending on what level of engagement we needed to get to, I have spoken to all varieties at various locations, so it doesn't bother me. So I was actually looking to get access to your network, and then from there, once we started talking more, then this relationship blossomed. And then as I started working with some of the actual U.S. government contractors that's a part of the association, and getting bids and interacting and looking to put together contracts, putting together proposals. And some of them have very high volume, to where I told them, I can give you as much as you want. As long as there's no geographic limitation, I can give you whatever you need, because this is what I do. So yeah, it was very happenstantial that we met, but yeah, it's been a great relationship thus far. It's been really good.
I'll tell you, we're very excited, because the fact is that that's one of, I would say, the most scary things to most of our clients, is just trying to, even though we tell them, we talk about no bid contracts. Well, that instantly is easier than a contractor bidding on, because you're not submitting a 100 or 200 page bid, but you still got to go through, you still have the contract, you still have all the compliance issues of the contract, you still have to adhere to it. Because when you mentioned a little earlier, if there's some confusion and someone might be afraid to say, is this what you really want? And there's some confusion and something is not provided to your government decision maker, your contracting officer, that they wanted, and you mess it up, frankly, you're probably not going to get another contract.
But yeah, and you talk no bid contracts for people. I think people sometimes forget, because the bidding process is scary. In order to get to no bid, you have to establish a relationship, and there has to be some semblance of trust that I know that you can do the job because you've done the job. So that's the other barrier we can help people get over with past performance, when we go and talk to contract specialists, contract officers, and people like that.
Yeah, because guess who has the relationships? You have relationships.
Yep.
And again, I think something, I wanted to say it before and I just didn't get a chance. The old saying is talk the talk. You talk the talk. You talk their language. And that's incredibly, incredibly important. And again, can be, for small businesses trying to break into this, incredibly intimidating to try and get into this. And, you mentioned you easily, like most folks I know with the federal government, acronyms are things you use constantly. You're throwing them around here and there. And a lot of us, I've been doing this for a while, and I occasionally even still have a chat with you and go, what was that? The acronym he just threw at me. But because you just know so much about it. which again makes you invaluable as a teaming partner. Shawn, I want to thank you so much. You have been wonderful today on the show. I'm going to go ahead and leave the door open again. I would love to have you back for another one of our shows in the future, because I can think of a number of things I can still talk to you about, how you work with members in our association, but then down to you told us a few war stories, but I mean, I know you have some incredible war stories that we just don't have time to share right now. But once again, thank you for your time, and we'll look forward to talking to you again.
But Ron, I appreciate you. Thank you very much for having me. If you extend the invite, chances are I'll accept it. So thank you again.
That sounds great. We'll work it out. Okay. Well, I want to thank you. And what was one of the key things he said towards Shawn said towards the end of the show there? Relationships. We say that every show that we have, we talk about relationships, whether you're talking no bid contracts, whether you're talking about teaming, whether you're talking about obviously building relationships, whether it's with a prime, whether it's with a sub, whether it's with federal contracting officers, federal employees. It's incredibly important. So that's kind of the overarching theme of the way we work with our members and the way we help them get federal contracts. So I want to thank all of you for joining in. And again, my name is Ron Imbach, Mr. Supercharged Profits. So happy that you could join us for another one of our shows. And if you want to check out on your screen right now, you should see the QR code. That's going to give you all the information. So if you want to learn more about us, if you want to learn more about the programs that have obviously incredibly and talented people like Shawn involved in working with our members, helping them to get federal contracts, please check us out. Again, check out our website. We have classes that we offer as well. You can check out what we call our master classes. We have CEO roundtables. If you're a CEO and you want to learn more with a group of C-level executives from your industry, we have meetings like that weekly as well. We're all about federal contracts. We're all about small businesses and trying to help. And quite frankly, our show, Thrive in a Recession Through the Power of No Bid Contracts. It's all about helping small businesses thrive and excel and grow their business with federal contracts. A lot of potential out there. It's a huge ocean of opportunities. And if you're not taking advantage of it right now, and that's not one of your income streams for your business, you might be missing out. So again, my name is Ron Imbach. Thank you for joining me. I'll look forward to seeing you next time on Thrive in a Recession Through the Power of No Bid Contracts.
Thank you for joining us on the Thrive in the Recession Through the Power of No Bid Contract show. If you want more information on no bid contracts, visit us at www.fedprofits.com. We hope that you will join Ron Imbach, Mr. Supercharged Profits, next time as we continue to explore how no bid federal contracts can seriously grow your business. Be sure to subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts or visit the FedProfits YouTube channel. Until next time, have a prosperous week.